This is a story about the love of two young people in their youth. A woman who had the courage to start over, and a man who never stopped loving. Charlote and Enrique are two hearts that life separated too soon, and that destiny, years later, decided to bring together again. When they meet again, after so many years apart, she, afraid of being rejected, says to him, "Enrique, I need to tell you something, and I understand if after this, you don't want anything more with me. I'm pregnant by another man. You don't have to do anything, okay? I'll understand if you want to go on with your life." And he, without thinking twice, kneels in front of her and answers, "I have nothing to do with what people are going to say. The only thing I need to worry about is loving you. You came back to me, Charlotte. And I'm not going to let you go away again. Never again." This is the story that is going to move you now. Before we begin, leave your comment down below and subscribe to the channel. And tell me one thing. Have you ever had a great love? One of those that we never forget. So come with me. I'm going to tell you this story. In the countryside, where the afternoons took a long time to end, and the smell of wet earth announced the rain before it arrived, lived two young people who loved each other in secret. Charlotte was 16 years old, her hair tied with a red scarf and a way of laughing that made even the quietest people smile along with her. Enrique was 18, the son of simple farmers, hands calloused from work and a serious gaze that only softened when she was near. They would meet at the end of the afternoon, near the old wooden corral that was no longer used, where no one went. There, sitting on a fallen log, they exchanged promises that only the wind could hear. "One day I'm going to ask for your hand, Charlotte. I'm going to work. I'm going to save money. I'm going to build a house for us," Enrique would say, with the certainty of someone who still didn't know what life had in store. "And I'm going to wait, no matter how long it takes," she would reply, squeezing his hand as if sealing a pact. No one knew about that love, not her parents, not his. It was a secret kept between two young hearts, nourished only by glances exchanged at church on Sundays, and notes hidden under a stone near the fence. But life in the countryside was not easy. Charlotte's father, a man of few words and many debts, saw the land becoming drier and drier, the harvest weaker and weaker. One night, he gathered the family at the table and announced, without ceremony, "I sold the land. We're moving to the big city. There's work there. There's a future for you." Charlotte felt the ground open beneath her, not because of the house she would lose, nor the neighbors she would leave behind, but because of Enrique. How could she tell him? How could she say goodbye to a love that no one knew existed? On the last afternoon, she ran to the old corral, her heart racing, hoping to find him there as always. And she found him. "My father sold. We're leaving tomorrow morning," she said, her voice breaking, tears already flowing before she even finished the sentence. Enrique remained silent for a moment that seemed to last an eternity. Then he held her face with both hands, as if committing every feature of that face to memory forever. "Then I will wait for you. One day you will come back. I know you will. And if I don't come back, then I will wait for you anyway." There were no more words, only a tight, long embrace, as if they could, just by the strength of that gesture, stop time. The next morning, the loaded cart left along the dirt road, raising dust that gradually erased the landscape. Charlotte looked back until she could see nothing more, and Enrique, hidden behind a tree, watched the dust disappear on the horizon and felt, for the first time, the real weight of a farewell. In the big city, everything was different. The streets were paved, the houses stuck together, the noise never ended. Charlotte grew up there, got used to the movement, learned to live in that place she never truly felt was hers. But in some corner of her chest, she kept the memory of the old corral, the red scarf, and Enrique's calloused hands. The years passed. Charlotte turned 27, and in that time she met a young man named Ricardo, who worked in a store near her house. He was friendly, talkative, and knew how to say the right words at the right time. "I want to marry you, Charlotte. I want to build a life by your side," he would say. always with that easy smile that one trusts. She, tired of waiting for a memory that already seemed too distant, allowed her heart to open again. She believed his words, believed the promises, believed that perhaps this was the new beginning she needed. But everything changed when she discovered she was pregnant. The news, which should have been a reason for joy, was received by Ricardo with icy silence. In the following days, he began to distance himself. Short answers, cancelled meetings, increasingly empty excuses. And then, on an ordinary morning, he simply disappeared. Without a letter, without explanation, without leaving any trace. Charlotte knocked on the door of the room where he lived and found only an empty space, as if that man had never existed. It was that night, alone, sitting on the floor of her own room, with her hand over her belly that was already beginning to round, that Charlotte cried like she hadn't cried since leaving the countryside. She cried with rage, fear, shame, but mainly she cried with loneliness. They were difficult days. She thought about giving up on everything, about hiding from the shame she imagined feeling from the neighbors and family. But inside her grew not only a child, a strength she didn't know she had also grew on a sleepless early morning, looking out the window at the distant lights of the city that had never really been hers. Charlotte made a decision. I'm going back. I'm going back to the countryside, and I'm going to raise my daughter there, where the air is clean and people's hearts are too. No matter what I find, I'm going to start from zero. She didn't know if there was still someone waiting for her. She didn't know if the land her father sold still existed in the same way. She didn't know, mainly, if the boy from the old corral still remembered her. But she knew one thing. She had nothing left to lose, and her daughter deserved to be born in a place where she could one day learn what it meant to belong. The dirt road seemed smaller than in Charlotte's memory, but the smell of the damp bush was exactly the same as years before. She got off the bus with a small suitcase and a very prominent belly, not knowing exactly where to go, but certain that this was the only place in the world she could still call home. Asking about work in a nearby village, she heard about a large cattle ranch that needed a cook. The owner, they said, was a serious, hard-working man, owner of one of the largest herds in the region, who had built everything himself from the difficult years until now. She had no idea who this man was. Enrique, after Charlotte left, was never the same smiling boy from the old corral. He buried the pain deep in his chest and threw himself body and soul into working the land his family still owned. Year after year, he bought more cattle, more land, hired more people. He prospered like few others in the area. But inside, a part of him continued waiting, even without admitting it to anyone. That's how Charlotte arrived at the ranch, introduced by Donna Ana, the housekeeper. Without knowing whose place it was, she started working in the kitchen, putting care into every dish from someone who had nothing more than her own effort to offer. The days passed, and the owner of the ranch, always busy in the corrals and with business, had not yet crossed paths with the new cook. Until one afternoon, Donna Hannah commented, satisfied, "Mr. Enrique is going to love the seasoning of this new girl. It's been a long time since this house has smelled food made with so much care." The name echoed in Charlotte's chest like a distant thunder. It couldn't be. Not on that ranch. Not after so many years. The next morning, when Enrique entered the kitchen for coffee, the two met face to face for the first time in years. Time stopped. No words came out first. He recognized those eyes, even before recognizing her whole face, and his heart, which he thought had grown used to her absence, jumped with joy like it hadn't since the days of the old corral. "Charlote?" he finally asked, his voice trembling. "Enrique," was all she managed to say before the tears took over both of them. They sat on the ranch veranda that same afternoon, and she told him everything. The forced departure, the years in the city, the broken promise of a man who never had the courage to take responsibility for what he promised, and the decision to return to start over, even without knowing what she would find. Enrique listened to every word in silence, holding her hand as if afraid that releasing it would make her disappear again. But when she reached the end, her voice began to tremble, and she pulled her hand back, as if already preparing to be rejected once more. "Enrique," I need to tell you something. And I understand if after this, you don't want anything more with me. I'm pregnant. By another man. A man who disappeared when he found out, who didn't have the character or courage to take responsibility for his own child. She lowered her eyes, and the tears began to fall before she could finish. You don't have to do anything, okay? You don't have to feel obligated to anything. I'll understand if you want to go on with your life. Look at what you've revealed. Erra, look at the man you've become. And me arriving like this, pregnant with a child that isn't yours. Imagine what people will say. A respected rancher marrying a woman pregnant with another man's child. I don't want to trouble you, Enrique. I just needed to see you again before starting my life alone. Enrique remained silent for a moment. Then he stood up, knelt in front of her and held both of her hands firmly, looking straight into her eyes, as if he wanted every word to sink deep into her heart. I have nothing to do with what people are going to say. I never did. The only thing I need to worry about is loving you, the way I've always loved you, since the times of the old corral. And I'm going to love this child too, because she is not to blame for the man who fathered her not having the character to take responsibility for her. This child is going to grow up knowing she has a father who chose her, not just a blood father who turned his back. You came back to me, Charlotte. After everything, you came by, and I'm not going to let you go away again. She cried like she had never cried before, but this time it was with relief, with gratitude, with a love that had finally found the place where it could rest. I waited. I said I would wait, and I waited, he added, hugging her with all the strength his chest had stored for all those years. Months later, Isadora was born, and unlike what Charlotte feared, Enrique took the girl in as if she were his own blood daughter from the very first day. Isadora grew up calling him father, and he never made any distinction between her and the second daughter who'd come later. The fruit of the rebuilt love between the two. Isadora is my daughter. I love her the same way I would love any daughter God gave me. He would say whenever someone, out of ignorance, suggested otherwise. Charlotte and Enrique got married in a simple ceremony, under the same sky that once witnessed the promises exchanged at the old corral. And there, on that land that saw them separate and then reunite, they grew old together, surrounded by their daughters, the grandchildren who came later, and by a love that time could not erase, only strengthen. This story teaches us that true love has no hurry and no expiration date. Sometimes life takes us away from the people we love most, puts us on difficult paths, makes us suffer disappointments that seem impossible to overcome. But there is a huge difference between the love that promises and does not deliver, and the love that waits in silence without asking for anything in return. Charlotte needed to go through the pain of abandonment to understand the value of a love that never truly left. And Enrique needed to learn that loving truly means loving without conditions, including loving as a father, a daughter, who was not born of his blood, but was born of his heart. Here is the question for your reflection. How many times do we give up too soon on a love that only needed time to reunite? And how many times do we confuse beautiful promises with true love? If this story touched your heart, leave below in the comments what you felt the most. Leave your like. Share it with someone who needs to hear a story of hope today. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because every week there's a new story of life, love and overcoming waiting for you here. Until next time, and may true love always find its way.